Arts at the Capitol Theater's production of The Laramie Project by Moises Kaufman and the members of Tectonic Theater Project. In the unlikely case of an emergency, exits are located in the back of the theater. Please no photography or video recording of any kind during the performance. Please turn off your cell phones as to not distract the audience members or the actors. The Laramie Project is for mature audiences and features adult content and language. If you have chosen to bring children, please escort them to the lobby if they are being disruptive. Thank you, and enjoy ACT's production of The Laramie Project.
In Laramie, Wyoming tonight, 4 people are in jail, and a young gay man is in a deep coma, near death, from a savage beating. It's a crime that goes beyond despicable. NBC's Roger O'Neill on hate and the law and the fate of Matthew Shepard.
It was a gruesome discovery of this fence late Wednesday afternoon as the sun was setting. 2 bicycles approached, and at first they said it looked like a scarecrow tied to the fence. Instead, the lifeless, savagely beaten body of 21-year-old Matthew Shepard, a University of Wyoming freshman, a gay man, barely alive tonight, in a coma, brain damage, and on life support. Today, 2 young men, Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney, whispered an obscenity as he came to the court for charge.
In the county of Albany,
Kidnapping, robbery, and attempted murder. A hate crime, according to police, who say the 2 met Shepard in this Laramie bar, tricked him into believing they were gay too, then the 3 left together. It was 1 a.m. Wednesday morning, but Shepard, a small man, was allegedly beaten with the butt of a pistol, burned with cigarette butts, and finally tied spread eagle to the fence, left to die. Wyoming is known as the cowboy state. It's one of 8 without a hate crime law. For the last 5 years here, state lawmakers have defeated attempts to legislate against hate, saying they didn't want to give preferential treatment to homosexuals. At the University of Wyoming here in Laramie, students say while there is tolerance on campus to those who are different, it's another story off campus. And at Wild Willie's Cowboy Bar today, patrons said hate is easy to find here.
if you come to Wyoming and you're gay, you're looking for trouble.
2 women have also been arrested in this case. Chastity Paisley, who was in tears today, and an 18-year-old juvenile. This is Shepard's friend, Kathleen Byrne.
We're probably never going to speak with him again. And he's gone.
Friends say Shepard's goal in life was to help others. But tonight, as he clings to life, people here only know him as a victim of hate at a lonely fence outside of town. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Laramie, Wyoming.
Moment. A definition. On November 14, 1998, the members of Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by members of the company and other found texts.
Moment. Journal entries. Members of the company. Andy Paris.
Moises called saying he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked him what it was all about, and he said he wanted to do a piece about what was happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronick.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. I've made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us, our first night in Laramie, and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
Company member Greg Hirati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, saying something like this. I was born and raised here. My family's our 3rd generation. So, my grandparents moved here in the early 1800s, so we basically had three. Well, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and re-water, and Laramie's a major stopping point. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest where I used to teach because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your old-time, traditional-type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, you ruin it and you lose your living. So you first of all have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
No, I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. The best thing about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most times it don't.
And then you got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And out here in the summertime, my kids play out until 11, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
Well, I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So, it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And, well, for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business. Because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most times they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bosler, but everyone in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie is better than where I grew up, I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here, and one time someone followed me out of the crime scene, and it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day, real clear and crisp, and the sky was that blue that, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue, it's just gorgeous. And the mountains in the background, little snow on them. And this one reporter, a lady, person that was out there, she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, well, this is a really popular area, people run, and mountain biking's really big out here, horseback riding, it's just, well, it's close to town. And she looks at me and she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, look at the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, and just take in what's around you. But they're just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I felt they were stupid. They're missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town. Small enough for you to have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. But now, after Matthew, I'd say that we're a town defined by an accident. A crime. We've become Waco. We've become Jasper. We're a noun. a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Moment. Rebecca Hilliard. I must tell you that when I first heard that you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say you just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more important, I thought about it and decided we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they are honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz. Moment. Angels in America.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. The family's been here for generations. Now, when it came time for me to go to college, my parents they couldn't afford to send me. I wanted to study theater, and I knew if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get a scholarship. And there's this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew if I didn't take first place in duets, then I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. And so I read it, and I knew I could win first place if I did a good enough job. So when the time came, I told my parents about the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And they brought me into their room and told me that if I did that scene, that they would not come see me in the competition because they believed that it was wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. They felt that strongly about it that they didn't want to see their son do probably the most important thing to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I've never gone against my parents' wishes, so I was kind of worried about it. But I decided to do it. Oh man, it was amazing. We won. We took first place. And that's how come I can afford to be here at the university. Because of that scene. It's one of the best moments of my life. My parents weren't there. And to this day, that's the only thing my parents haven't seen me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is, I wanted to win. It was just such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Moment. Journal entries. Company member Greg Pirati.
He arrived today at the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said, Wyoming, like no place on earth, instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then, so yes, there are a lot of us around. But I promise that I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, Lee tried to explain to me
To no avail. What chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through. Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight. Just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area, past the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pools or cable TV are usually touted, it said hate is not a Laramie value.
Moment. Allison and Marge. Greg Pirati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, there used to be like when Marge was growing up. Well, it's mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
I mean, there was more land. You keep your pet cat, your horse, your little chickens. You know, just have a little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house with my all together, so the house where the kids were at school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close,
then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I get the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes?
But how's he gonna use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. This used to be a big railroad town at one point, when they moved everything down to Cheyenne, Green River, and Omaha. Well, you know, it's just a big driving spot for all the railroads. Because, when was it, in the 50s? Well, they did have one big roundhouse, and it's such a shock to people looking fleet engines.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to, sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I tell you, Wyoming, bad in terms of jobs. I mean, you got the university that's got the big, high, whoop-de-doo jobs. But, the other bulk of people in Wyoming are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either bartending or in the service industry for most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now I'll tell you, in Laramie there is a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that aren't don't get educated. That's why I told you before that my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind that I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's fact.
But, if it weren't for that university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Do I have to tell them? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, you're getting education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As far as the whole gay issue is concerned, I don't give a damn one way or another, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the American population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, they've been drinking, might actually smack one on the mouth, but then they would just walk away. Most of them would just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
Well, I'd say that Marge knows a lot more except when she's willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Well, we still haven't decided. When we're finished, we're going to try to bring it around to Laramie.
Okay then, there are parts I won't tell you.
Moment. Matthew. Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, an owner of a shop, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did it go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he says, can you pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand? So I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, it was a little guy. About 5'2". Soaking wet, I bet you 97 pounds tops. So he walks up to the window. I'm going to try to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window and I go, are you Matthew Shepard? And he goes, yes, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard or anything. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt. I want you to know I'm gay and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? I go, how are you paying? The fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. For that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? But I liked him because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know. You know, how does one person ever tell about another? Now, you really should talk to my sister, Romaine. She was a close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo-Choo. You know, because we always used to call him Matthew, and then we just started calling him Choo-Choo. And whenever I think about Matthew, I always think about his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in, and he'd just be like, you know, he'd just smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would, like, stare people down at the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit at the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he'd sit there and he'd stare at them until they left. And then he'd claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV stations I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was just really smart on political affairs, but not too smart on, like, common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. So his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to a person who was excited about this track he was about to embark on. He was just starting to figure out wanting to work on human rights, how he was going to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are things I can do in this world. There are opportunities for me here. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. And he told me he just joined the gay and lesbian group on campus. And he said he was really enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. He was just totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this. Moment. Who's getting what?
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly, what do you call them? You know, the queens, the gay people queens. You know, the run-around faggot type people. No, they're the ones that throw bales of hay, jump on horses, brand them and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't fuck with a Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But, that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. Because, I know a lot of gay people. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years, and I don't think Wyoming people give a damn, one way or another, whether you're gay or straight. That's just what I just said, doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop and think. Who's getting what?
Moment. Easier said than done.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked at my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And I was in my office, and I saw that this woman called, and I was expecting it to be, health insurance call, something like that. So I call her back, and I can hear her. She's clicking away at her keyboard. And I said, "Hi, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call." And she was like, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are." And I was like, huh? And she said, "I hear you came as a couple." "I'm one too, not a couple, just a person." And so she was a kind of lesbian that knew I was coming and wanted to meet with me immediately. She later told me that there were other lesbians she knew who wouldn't be seen with me. That I would irreparably taint them. That just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloniker.
But I kept telling myself people should live where they want to live. And there would be times when I would go down to Denver and I would go to gay bars and people would ask me where I was from and I would say Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there. So many gay men who grew up here. They're like, "This is not a place where I can live. How can you live there? I had to get out." But every once in a while, there'd be a guy and he'd be like, "Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love it there. That's where I want to live." And they get this starry-eyed look. And I'm like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course. Moment. Journal entries.
Today we are moving from our motel and heading for the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Gronick.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the service by the Reverend himself standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of his sermon that morning.
Moment. The word.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, there's a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old after all. What's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town. Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is what we absolutely believe, that God still speaks to man. We don't think that it happened and some people wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So to the left of that spectrum, so far left that I'm probably sitting by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. And you know, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to the right of that spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest who is well established here. And God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, you know, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like we were going to stand back and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We were supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries. And one of our responsibilities is to learn what is it that God wants. So you study your scripture, you look to your leaders, then you sort of get a feel for what the bounds are. Now once you sort of know what the bounds are, you sort of get a feel for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that went out on the family. A family is defined as one woman, one man, and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. You just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the world that it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived here in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around. Tumbleweed, cement factory, and asked myself, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Wyoming.
Moment. A start.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She is an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah, like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there with my pop and chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that, yeah, that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And then I was picturing, like, you're going to be in a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Moments.
Lifestyle 1.
Hello? Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronick, and I went to the Reverend's, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that lifestyle. You know what I mean? And he was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, I know. I really understand. It must have been just terrible.
Oh, yes. I think we are all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call back tonight at 9.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Moment, the fireside.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar, with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. And Louisa Grand Musway in 1870 cast the first women's ballot in any free election in the world, and that's why Wyoming is called the Equality State. So what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to have a restaurant, I want to have a gift shop, I want to have a pool hall, and do all this shit, you know? Every night's ladies' night. So the Fireside is the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night, 20 or 30 people here. Matthew Shepard came in and stood right where you were sitting, just hanging out. I mean, if you want to talk to someone, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character speaks for himself. Hey! Is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this quick, brief, get it over with, but it'll be everything. Facts, just the facts. Alright, here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time, Tuesday nights. Around 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil Labrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute mannerisms. Manners, politeness, intelligence, and taking care of him. As in tips. Yeah, you know, dress nice, clean cut, everything conversation. There's some people you just know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect within their vocabulary. So he kicked it there, didn't seem like he had any problems or like he was looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Now, approximately 11:30, 11:45, 11:30, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson show up. Now, I didn't know their names at the time, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. And they came in just very stone-faced, dirty, grungy, rude. Ah, gimme, that type of thing. So they came up to the bar, and as you know, paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I mean, that's something you don't forget. You don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters. That's a freaking nightmare. Now, Henderson and McKinney didn't seem too intoxicated at all. They just came in, walked up to the bar, ordered their beer, took the pitcher back there with them to the pool area, and they kept to themselves. Now, next thing I knew, probably half hour later, they were kind of walking around, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one, because obviously, they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I got a real good feeling they don't got any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew, because he came from a lot of it. And he would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery, but I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then I looked over and Aaron and Russ had been talking with Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And then he and Aaron got aggravated with it and said that they were straight, didn't want anything to do with them, and walked off. That's when he and Russ said that they went into the bathroom and decided to pretend that they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him. They wanted to teach him a lesson not to come on to straight people.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came onto them. I absolutely 100% disbelieve and refute this statement. Refute it. Now, I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, Character reference. He wasn't coming on to anybody in that bar that night. They say he's gay. He's a flaming gay. He's gonna come on to people like that. Bullshit. He didn't come on to me. Hello? Came on to them? I don't buy it. And two, territorialism is the word I'll use for this. And that's the fact that they were in the pool area and Matt was at the bar. And upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area. And the area that he'd been seen in all night. So who came on to who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, like, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. Like, if someone were to start talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had any problem striking up conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was out there in the bar alone without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So, basically what I'm testifying to, because I'm also basically the key eyewitness in this case. What I'm testifying is I saw Matthew Shepard leave. I saw two individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the backs of their head. At the same time, Aaron and Russ were no longer around. You do the math.
Actually, I think the bartender, not the bartender, I think the DJ was the last one to see him on his way out that night. Give him a cigarette or something. His name was Shadow.
I was the last person that Matt talked to before he left the fireside that night. I was just bullshitting around my shit, and he was like, he's Shadow, da 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 da. He stopped me. I stopped him, actually. And I was like, what, man? You getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them two guys, and they were standing outside. And you could see it. He was looking over at them, and they were looking back at him. And you can definitely tell something was up. I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And then when they left, you've seen it. When they left, it was in a black truck. It was a small truck, and they all sat in front. Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, you know? I didn't think them guys was going to be like that.
Moments. McKinney and Henderson. A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Well, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I was like, I know he was living out far at his trailer park, is what he told me, with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, you know, because they had a kid. He was 22 years old, but he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. You know, like, he'd always dress in, like, big clothes, like, you know, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid he just wanted to fit in. You know, acting tough, acting cool, but, you know, you could get in his face about it, and he'd back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Annenson.
Russell was just so sweet. I mean, he was the Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course this makes sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever, and like, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the chuck wagon too. And I remember at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. I mean, we were all pretty much just party time, and he didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same neat little Russell. I remember him coming up to me and being like, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which, I never did get around to doing that. But now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
Moment. The fence.
Moment. Finding Matthew Shepard. fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful, personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty that you can't help but think of Matthew out there for nearly 18 hours in freezing temperatures with the view from up there isolated. And the whole God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Parada.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure that no one saw me crying.
Lee Fondikowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Moment. Finding Matthew Shepard.
Well, I took off on my bicycle about 5 p.m. from my dorm. Just kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area. So on my way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go, which now it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him. Because there was no way I was going to go that way. So I'm in some deep-ass sand. And I want to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over my handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just sort of looking around, and I saw something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just lying there by a fence, and I didn't think much of it. I thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up. Thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and got closer to him. And that's when I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me noticing it was a human being, was his hair, because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I even noticed the chest moving up and down. I still thought it was a dummy. I thought it was just some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, well, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I just ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I seen was partially somebody's feet, so I got out of my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, lying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was lying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood all over his head. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. No, his mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all over his head. Well, the only place he did not have any blood on him, on his face, was where he had appeared to have been crying down his face. Well, his head was distorted. You know, it did not look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us, I can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who worked in big city hospitals have seen this. But we have some people here who've not worked in a big city hospital. And it's not something you expect here. You expect it. You expect these kind of injuries to come from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see this from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I was yelling at the top of my lungs at him, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up, hello? But he didn't move, he didn't flinch, he didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope that went around the bottom end of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it's someone from out of town that comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen, you know? Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie, but if this is someone who has been beaten repeatedly, certainly I think that's something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was tied so tight. I finally got the knife through there. I'm sorry. We rolled him over to his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. So immediately I rolled him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. Well, I had seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. And then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, it appears that he had gotten into a fight later on that night. So, I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go and treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another, 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care is beyond our capabilities. I called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew, and I would have never recognized him.
Then, 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies, and for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, how we are all his kids, our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion, both of them.
Moments, a Laramie man. This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name, and it was like, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know, that's not my student, that's not this person who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop, Romaine Patterson, and someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie. And they said his name was Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description. It's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach. You know, just instantly sick to my stomach, and well, I had to tell Romaine that, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
For Friday morning, I first find out about it. Go to school, walk out, boom, there it is, in the branding iron. So, immediately I drove to the nearest newsstand, buy a Laramie boomerang because I want more details. Buy that, go home, before I can even open the paper, my boss calls and he's like,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yes.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yeah, he was.
You need to get down to the bar right now. We need to talk about this. We gotta discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Puget Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid from Wyoming, and he looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions, and so we agreed that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that. We'll try and gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started talking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
We need to go to their arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure that they were in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Moments, the essential facts. Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
Catherine Connolly. The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anyone told you about the arraignment? There were probably about 100 people in town, probably as many news media. By this point, a lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids, that everyone who's from around here is some relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened, there's 200 people in the room at this point. And they walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary-eyed at this point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's just a statement of facts, and the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, and Russell Arthur Henderson met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed, inside the cab of their pickup, a credit card and a pair of black, patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. The subjects took the victim's credit card, wallet containing $20 in cash, his shoes, and other items, and obtained the victim's home address in order to later burglarize his home.
Ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Moments. Live and let live. Sergeant King.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand how somebody could do something like that. I mean, we have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that, of course, these people were from somewhere else. Then of course you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty obvious. We do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating, don't don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details kept coming in about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Moment. Gem City of the Plains. Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town. Both were from broken homes and as teenagers had run-ins with the law. They lived in trailer parks and scratched out a living working at fast food restaurants and fixing roofs.
As Matt Shepard knew and as his friends all know to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge, yeah, it was heard, and there's hundreds of reporters. There's reporters everywhere in town, and we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards.
These people are predators. Like, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. Like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. So, if they try to do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You've got the beginnings of the news story where they have the graphics in the background where they got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. And it's like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here like, wait a minute, we had these guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
Eileen and Gil Engen.
Now, we're not a good community, and the majority of the people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think the gay community took this as their advantage, said, oh, this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Now this been heterosexual these two boys decided to take out and rob has never would have made the national news. And now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable. Because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes like watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here? Moment. Medical update. Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been maybe 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I had barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition, approximately 9:15 p.m., October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. This had caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the past 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling his temperature.
Moment. Seeing Matthew. Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pleaded not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price also pleaded guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with Rob DeGree, Chief Investigating Officer on the case.
Well, once
know that they are
So
something
I guess the thing that bothered me
appreciate.
the most was
And something that Matthew would.
going down to Poacher Valley where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me
Please
the most
respect our
was
privacy.
seeing
We can
him,
concentrate all of our efforts,
touching him.
thoughts, and love on ourselves.
As a homicide detective,
Thank
you
you
look
very
at
much.
bodies, and this poor boy is just sitting here fighting all his life, trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know.
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found it.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I want to, get it out. I don't want it to be there. That's the biggest part for me, seeing that picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, that I happen to be the one that found him. Because the big question with me, with my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
What that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me. I have to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck was not coming after me. But my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I had an opportunity that night.
Matt Galloway.
And I keep thinking, I should have noticed. These guys should not have been talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down for those 20 seconds when I was washing dishes. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
Well, you spent a lot of time studying. You spent hours and hours and hours, and you study and study and study. Talk to your officers. Make sure they understand. Talk to your witnesses again. And always go back to this flash of I see Matthew in the hospital. I wanted it so tight that there was no way that they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
it was such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, and you put them on, and they kept breaking, so finally you just ran out of gloves. So we figured, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time, don't hesitate. And, so you just keep moving, and you try to help Matthew and find an airway, and that's what you do,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
So probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV, and the doctor said you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure. Because you see, I had been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed. So you think, oh shoot.
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? He said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the 8 TZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that's a medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop you getting the disease?
That is a mean, nasty medicine. It's mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair, yeah.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. But we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson. And two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. It has been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents told me they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's a parent thing, because they're terribly proud of you, because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So I finally said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn, and I don't believe them. I think, okay, here's your opinion, and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are they gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
You look pretty funny.
you know, what can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
To a ventilator until he died. His parents were spared the painful decision of removing him from life support.
They said that like the good, caring son that he was, he was able to remove from them the guilt or stress of having to make that decision.
A decision no parent should ever have to make. Lisa Salters, ABC News, Laramie, Wyoming.
Moment. Email. University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who looked the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the Gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's being is not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
and I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. And it's like you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me, and my family, and my community.
Moment. Vigils. That first week alone, vigils were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And
Moment.
the Blue Jay Valley
Medical
Hospital
update.
website received close
Matthew
to 1
Shepard
million
medical
visitors
update
from
at
across
9
the
a.m.
country and
Sunday,
around the
October
world,
11th.
all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew. Moment. Live and let's live. Jedediah Schultz.
There are certain things when I sit in church, and the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. I don't know. I'm still learning about myself. I'm going through changes, and I guess I don't know enough to make the decision that says homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. And right now I'd say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it, but maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, and I'm not gonna, persecute them or anything. No, that's not gonna be getting in the way between me and another person at all.
Conrad Miller.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay. And if my kids ever asked me, well, I'd set them down and I'd say, this is what gay people do and this is what animals do, okay? And I'd say, this is the life, this is the lifestyle, this is what they do. And I'd say this is why I believe it's wrong.
Murdoch Cooper.
There's a lot more gay people around than what you think. Now, it doesn't bother him because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. You cross that line, you're asking for it. Some say you made a pass at him. You don't pick up regular people. But it partially made me feel better because partially it was Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Zachy Salmon.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety. I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere inside we know it can happen to us at any time. You know, I would be afraid to walk down the street and just display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Sloan.
And it's even in some of the Western literature. Live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes, and I'm like, that is crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to. If I don't tell you I'm a fag, then you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
Moment. It happened here.
We went to the candle vigil. And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit.
Zubaida Ula.
I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And someone got up there and said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of a town. But it is that kind of a town. If it wasn't this kind of a town, why did this happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie because it happened here. So how could it not be a town where this kind of thing happens? It's just totally like circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this, and we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. And I'm not going to step away from that and say, we need to show the world this didn't happen. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime. I feel everyone needs to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
Moment. Shannon and Jen.
I was in the fireside one afternoon when I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. You guys knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out about this, I thought it was really, really awful. I mean, I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what, but Matthew had money. Shit. He had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. He was just in the wrong place, the wrong time, said the wrong things. And I won't lie to you, there was times I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but yeah, it was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They've both done it. I know one night they went out to Cheyenne to go do it and they came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone that they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
But do you think there was any homophobia involved that might have contributed to some of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay, because he didn't like, the gay people that I've seen him interact with, he was fine as long as, you know, they didn't hit on him. As long as it didn't come up.
Yeah, as long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression Aaron knew other gay people?
Well, I'm sure that he knew people that are gay. I mean, he worked at a KFC, and there were some people up there that, yeah, and I'm not saying it's bad. I don't know. Half the people I know in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
First of all, I'd ask him if he'd ever do any more tweak.
He wouldn't, I bet. If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there. But I'm sure he is, though. I'd probably just want to, like, hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
So you guys both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
Moment homecoming.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent, anti-gay hate crime.
This was homecoming weekend. There's a lot of people in town, and there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled, and the students decided to tag on the back of it, you know, the banner supporting Matthew Shepard.
University President Philip Dubois.
And the people wearing the armbands supporting the armbands, and people wearing the armbands that the people had made.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has 2 windows on 2 opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south. And that is the exact homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. And I was very disappointed because I really wanted to march with the people that were walking for Matthew. But I couldn't, so I just watched from my window. And I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived in this town for many years, and I've seen a lot, and I was very moved when I saw the tag on the end of the homecoming parade. 100 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So when the parade went to the end of the street to make a U-turn, I went to the other side of my apartment to watch it come.
I was right up in front there when they were holding that banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. A mass of people, families, mothers holding these 6-year-old kids and tying these armbands around their 6-year-old kids' arms and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. I mean, it was amazing. Absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done.
Well, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming. And I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade started coming down the street, the number of people marching for Matthew had grown 5 times. There were 500 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. 500 people, can you imagine? And people kept joining in. The tag at the end was bigger than the rest of the parade. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face, and I thought to myself, thank God that I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Moment, one of ours.
I really haven't been all that involved per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I found out about it. Now, when I first found out, I thought it was just terrible. I can't, nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. And I think a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew as a saint and making him as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. There's just some things that I found out that it's scary. You know, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things, you know, being the kind of person that he was. He was just a barfly, you know? And I think he flaunted it. I think he pushed himself around. Everybody's got problems, but why they chose to exemplify him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. You murder someone because you hate them. It doesn't matter if you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
nonstop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we need to see through to the end. So, here we are, 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? You have served us well, and I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I was just this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened. And I thought, should we call the bishop and ask him permission to do the vigil? And I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that? Because what is correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust that if you make a play of this, that you say it right. You have to do your best to say it correct. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew, but you know, every time you're called a fag, or a les, or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke. Yeah, dyke. Do you realize that that is violence? That is the seed of violence, and I would resent it immensely if you would do anything to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You have to do your best to say it correct.
Moment. Christmas. Andrew Gomez.
I was in jail with Aaron in December. Got thrown in over Christmas, assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. So we were sitting there, and I was trying to eat my Christmas dinner. We were trying to eat our Christmas dinner. Trying to eat my stuffing, my motherfucking bread, my little roll and whatnot. And I asked Aaron, I was like, hey homie, tell me something. Tell me something, why did you... Now I'm thinking how I worded this. I was like, hey homie, why did you kill a faggot if you're destined to be a faggot later? You know what I mean? I mean, think about it. He's either going to get humped a lot or he's going to die. Now, I don't understand that. You know what he told me? Honest to God. This is what he said. He said, he tried to grab my dick. He's dumb, dog. He don't even act like it was nothing. Now, when I heard that they were coming to prison, when they heard that they were coming to prison, I heard that they was auctioning off those boys. Up there in the Max Ward, you know where the killers go? I heard that when they heard Aaron was coming to prison, that they were auctioning him off. I want him. I'll put aside 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I were those 2.
Moment. Lifestyle 2.
Hello.
Reverend,
Yes, hello.
I believe your wife has told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did, and let me tell you, I don't know that I want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I'm somewhat involved, and I just don't think it's appropriate
I
to talk.
completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
On Sunday?
Yes, I did.
You went to the services on Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Now, as I said, I'm somewhat involved with half the people in the case. Well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, those 2 of the accused have forfeited their lives. We've been after the 2 I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now one boy's on suicide watch, and I will work with him until they put him on the chair and turn on the jinx. I will work for his salvation. Now I believe those two deserve the death penalty. I will try to work with them spiritually. Now, as for the victim, I know that that kind of lifestyle is legal, but I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, that he had time to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
Moment. That night.
Around 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said, "His blood pressure has started to drop." Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and went to the ICU where the family was. And Judy came up to me, and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, just because what else do you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things that you just, Dennis, it's now public knowledge, and I'm going to go out and tell the whole world that this has happened, because it was clear to us that it was the whole world. It was the whole world. And so, Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4 a.m.
Moment. Medical update. Matthew Shepard, medical update, Monday, October 12th.
As of midnight, on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again would like to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Matthew's mother said, "Go home, give your kids a hug, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them."
Moment. Magnitude.
And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But, you know, we had been up for like 72 hours and gone home and gone to bed for maybe half an hour and had to get up and come in. And maybe I was just I don't know, but in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home, hug your kids, and oh, she doesn't have her kids anymore. And here I am, and I'm thinking, this is so lame. And then we started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion." And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here. Most of them were just generally very kind. But I did get this one. I guess I just didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. This guy wrote me and he said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all of your patients or just the faggots?"
Moment. H-O-P-E.
I spoke with Doc, who told me we would soon be coming back out to Laramie for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. This is some of what he had to say.
If they put those 2 boys to death, that would be defeating everything that Matthew would be thinking on them. Because Matt would not want them to die. He would want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing This whole thing, you see, ropes around hope. H-O-P-E.
Moment snow.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes. And I remember there were thousands of people in just black with umbrellas. And there were two churches. One for immediate family, invited guests, and people of that nature. And then another for everybody else who wanted to be there. And still, hundreds of people that could not fit into either of the churches. And there's a park by the church, and that's where these people were, and the park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites for full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm they have had. Like, that anyone could ever tell. Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, you know? Whatever higher spirit, you know, is like, that blows storms, was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew,
My
let us
most
pray to our Lord Jesus
striking
Christ,
memory
who said,
from the funeral
I am the resurrection
Carrie Drake,
and the life.
Casper Star
We
Trooper.
pray to the Lord.
was
Hear us,
seeing
Lord.
the
Lord,
Reverend
you
Fred
console
Phelps
Martha
from
and
Kansas,
Mary in
that
their distress.
scene go up in
Draw
the
near
park.
to us who mourn for Matthew.
Do you believe
And
the
dry the
Bible?
tears of those who weep.
6 months later, we
pray
returned
to
to
the
Laramie
Separate the precious from the
for the
bad.
trial of Russell
Lazarus,
Henderson,
you pray.
the first of the two perpetrators.
Sorrow.
You stand
There was to be a
there
capital
thinking
murder
that-
trial.
that
Hear
two
us,
times
Lord.
you
Before we
ever
got to
it
the
talks
Albany
about
County
God's
Courthouse,
It talks about
Fred
God's
Phelps
hate.
was already there.
Some
pray,
high school
Lord.
kids
We
got out early.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out he's coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided it was time someone stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, someone needs to show that there is a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So our idea is to dress up as angels. And we designed this angel outfit, for our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. And what we're going to do is we're going to encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we're going to completely block him. So this big-ass band of angels comes in, we don't say a fucking word. We just turn our backs to him and we stand there. And we're a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it angel action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
Solid gospel truth. Silly and buried like your silly arguments. When the little creatures put their hands on me and called an ordination, mine's from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be completely blocking his view, and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels' earplugs.
Moment. Jury selection. The court is in session. Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, you know, everybody came into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial, I hope they don't call me, or, oh my god, I've been called, how do I get out? Just wanting to be as far away from it as they could. Very, very fearful that they were going to have to be a part of that trial. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the comments were,
Yes, I would. Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
yes, sir.
No problem. Yep.
Well, can you imagine that? I mean, juror after juror after juror. Moment, Russell Henderson.
I understand, Mr. Henderson, that you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that they may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court makes a decision regarding whether or not the sentences will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand that there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know that your pain will never go away. You have showed us such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, Your Honor, we humbly plead to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes. Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there's not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong. You have my greatest sympathies. My hope is that one day you'll find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was very wrong, and I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay my debts for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter. And I wonder, Mr. Henderson, whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentencing be as follows. As to count 3, felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. As to count 1, kidnapping, you are to serve a term of imprisonment for the period of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive with sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church. So when this happened, you can imagine, disbelief. The church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the Mormon Church. And what that means is basically your name is taken off of all church records, and you disappear. Russell's reaction to that was not positive. It hurt him. It hurt him to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That's a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Moment. Angels in America.
We met again with Rebecca Hilliger at the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the University of Wyoming.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move How do we reach an entire state where there is some really deep-seated hostility toward gays? How do you reach them? This is the beginning, and guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents.
Jedediah Schultz.
So my parents asked me, they were like, so what plays are you doing this year at the university? And I was like, Angels in America, and I told them the whole list of plays, and they were like, Angels in America. Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, huh. So you're gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And we got into this huge argument, and the best thing I knew I had on them, that it was just after they had seen me in a performance of Macbeth, and like on stage, like I murdered a little kid and Lady Macduff and these two other guys. Homosexuality is a sin. She kept saying that, and I was like, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared myself this much for an audition. Never ever, not even close.
Not having to deal much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, once we started working onto the case and started talking to the people who were actually gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And we're still going to have people who hold with the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. I'm not going to put up with it, and I'm not going to listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I already lost a couple of buddies. I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done. So they got me to Fort Collins and drew the blood there, flew it to Michigan, and did all the DNA work there. And which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying, Hail Marys.
And you're just elated, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just happy. You know, you're just so happy, and you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity, and you're just so happy.
They were so happy.
And the force,
oh boy,
we went out and got shit-faced. They all bought me drinks too. It was great, and everybody hugged and cried, and you know, I kissed everyone who walked through that door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now, what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Oh, get over it, Ma.
Moment. A death penalty case. Almost a year to the day Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question many of you will have going forward is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Baruka, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county attorney's office that will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was on and off and on. I can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. You know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all of my heart, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I know I don't ever want to see them lock on Rollins Penitentiary again. I'll pay my nickel a day or whatever, little percentage of tax, nickel a day to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society again, and definitely never comes into my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't think that killing someone as redemption for having killed another is okay. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron, he was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney? How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers must be Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. They must be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? See, I don't know if many people will let them be their teachers, but I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to their sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voigt presiding. The court is in session.
Moment. Aaron McKinney. During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a tape recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in a court of law.
This is an excerpt of that confession.
So, you and Russ are at the fireside. You're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah,
Okay, where'd you guys go after you left the fireside?
some kid wanted to ride home.
What did he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looked like a queer.
Yeah, like a fag. You know.
Okay, how did you meet him?
Some kid wanted to ride home, and I just thought, the dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ start talking about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, we drove out past Walmart, and we got there. He starts grabbing my leg and grabbing my genital, and I was like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. You touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What did you beat him with?
I had blacked out my fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun, wondering what happened to me. I had a few beers, and I don't know. It's like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. I don't know. It was like somebody else was doing it.
What was the first thing that he said or that he did that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg, slid it as if he was going to grab my balls.
Moment. Gay panic.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit because that's like saying that it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone. It's the same thing.
As much as part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was gay bashing or gay panic, part of me is really grateful because in the trial I was really scared that they were going to try and say that it was a robbery or it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told. The truth is coming out.
Moment. Aaron McKinney continued.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
Yeah, sort of. Tried his little swings or whatever. They weren't very effective.
How many times did you hit him in the truck before where you guys stopped, where you left him?
I'd say I hit him 2 or 3 times. Probably 3 times with my fist and 6 times with the gun.
So Russ kind of dragged him over to the fence and tied him up?
Yeah, something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first, and then he got pretty scared.
Was Matt conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate number because I was scared he was going to tell the police. And then I asked him what my license plate said. He read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So, obviously you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I wouldn't say I hate them, but when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Well, can you answer me one thing? Why did you take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'm never going to be able to see my son again.
I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
So I'm going to go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No, you're just going to be arraigned today.
He's going to die for sure?
There's no doubt. that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they going to give me? 25 to life, or just a death penalty and get it over with?
That's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
Moment, the verdict. Has the jury reached the verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of armed robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of
Aaron
first-degree
McKinney was
murder,
found guilty of
robbery,
felony
we find the
murder,
defendant, Aaron James
which
McKinney,
meant the jury
guilty.
could
As
give
to
him
the
the
charge
death
of
penalty.
premeditated murder, we find the defendant,
That
Aaron
evening,
James McKinney,
Judy
not
and
guilty.
Dennis Shepard
But
were
as to the
approached
charge of
by
second-degree
McKinney's
murder,
defense
we find
team,
the
who
defendant,
pled
Aaron
for their
James
client's
McKinney,
life.
guilty.
The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said. Moment. Dennis Shepard's statement.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died, 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I kept wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself, but he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then, he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God, and I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Moment. Aftermath.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes, and Dennis Shepard was crying, and that got me bawling, and everybody just...
This was what we've lived and breathed for a year, daily. This has been my case daily, and Now it's over.
I think people are just going to be glad to get moved on.
It just hit me today, the minute that I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die alone out there, you know? Because if I wouldn't have come along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good that he didn't have to die alone up there.
I'm just glad it's over. Testifying in that case was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
It's time to move on. Well, for I think even the citizens are having the town painted red, so to speak. I just think people are going to be glad to get moved on.
Moment. Epilogue.
On our last trip to Laramie, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After our performance, we spoke.
I never let myself get personally involved in the whole Matthew Shepard. It didn't seem real to me. Matthew Shepard was just a name rather than an individual. I don't know. It's weird. It's so weird, man. I just feel bad for all that stuff I told you guys. That's why I wanted to hear the tape recordings from last year. I just can't believe I ever said that stuff about homosexuals. I mean, I can't believe I ever let myself think that that stuff made you any different from me.
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, now that's obviously changed in the fact that I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm going to go for communications and political science. Because I already have a career in political affairs. And actually, I just found out I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about the Angels or any of the speaking that I've done, you know, Matthew gave me. Matthew's like guiding this little path, this light for me to walk down. And it's just every time we get to like a door, he opens it and he just says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think the people here were up to it. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserve, and we look good now. Justice has been served. The OK Corral. We shot down the villains. We sent the prostitutes on the train. The town's cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. What's come out of it? What's come out of it that's concrete and lasting?
We all said we would meet one last time at the fence.
I've been up there to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember to myself that night that he and I drove around. He said, Laramie sparkles from here, doesn't it? And if he sits where he sat, exactly where he sat, Laramie sparkles from there, with a low-lying cloud. It's the lights from the airports bouncing off that goes. And I could just see it. I could just see it in his eyes. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling light.
Moment. Departure.
We spent the last 2 days gathering a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play by herself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice, but that is up to how you portray us. And that, in turn, is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
"Now you take care. I love you, honey."
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me and anyone else a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there'd be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you make a play of this, that you say it right. You have to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.
I don't know how many people came to town when I was still working at the police department to visit the fence, but I remember one older man, spent 30 years in the military, had to be in the closet through the whole thing, and Matt's death had a huge impact on him. He was from Vermont, and one day he just showed up, and I took him out to the fence. I did that with several people. It was important for them. It was important for them to come all the way to Laramie to see it.
On October 28, 2009, President Barack Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act into law. 1 year and 2 months later, on December 22nd, 2009,
I promised Judy Shepard,
don't ask, don't tell.
when she saw me in the Oval Office, that this day would come, and I'm glad that she and her husband Dennis could join us for this event. I'm also honored to have the family, the late Senator Ted Kennedy, who fought so hard for this legislation, and Vicki, Patrick, Kara, everybody who's here. I just want you all to know how proud we are of the work that Ted did to help this day, make this day possible. So, and thank you for joining us here. There you go.
Over the years, I've kind of defined Matthew in two ways. There's Matt, who I knew, and the good friend that I had. And then there's Matthew Shepard. And Matthew Shepard is very different from Matt. Matthew Shepard is this iconic hate crime that has happened in our history. And Matthew Shepard is not necessarily about Matt. It's about a community's reaction. It is about the media that followed. It is about the crime, but it's not about Matt. And that was a distinction that I had to make, making my way through this storm over the years, so that I could hold on to who Matt was to me personally, but also to recognize the importance of Matthew Shepard and that story and how it was told and will continue to be told throughout the years.
nothing has changed. The hate crime legislation hasn't passed on the federal level. Don't ask, don't tell is still there. The Defense of Marriage Act is still there. We just can't make it to the top. So here I am at the 10-year mark, still fighting. And I had to adapt so I could keep doing this. Or the feeling would be that it would all have happened in vain. I wasn't going to let that happen. Plus, just doing the work was my survival. It was how I coped with losing Matt. I could keep him with me all the time, and I was talking to someone and they said, well, don't you think maybe it's time to let go? Don't you think you're keeping Matt alive by doing that? And I said, of course I'm keeping it alive by doing this. That's the point. That is exactly the point. And I can keep telling the same wonderful stories, and my friends don't say, Judy, you told me that story yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. I can just keep telling it.